And what people don't realize is that when they're frozen in fear, this actually creates inflammation in the body. This inflammation further weakens your immune system. And actually, fear weakens your kidney network, and your kidneys are the foundation of the overall health and constitution of your body. So if you're frozen in fear, then guess what? You have sabotaged yourself.
That was Chris Shelton. And, I've known Chris Shelton for a long time. Really excited and happy to have him on the show today. We're talking about Qigong and all the health benefits of it. Thank you so much for joining me today, Health in the Real World.
It's the Health in the Real World podcast. It's time to start the show with Chris Janke as your host. Here to give you everything that you need when it comes to fitness strategies. We keep it simple and easy. It's your roadmap to get healthy. You don't need equipment and you don't need a gym. Just the right strategies to get you fit and trim.
Health in the Real World podcast brought to you by My Core Balance. If you haven't signed up yet, there's still time to use the promo code. Go to mycorebalance.com, enter promo code podcast to get 10% off of your monthly membership. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. Now we're talking with Chris Shelton. Hello and welcome to Health in the Real World podcast. We are joined today with Chris Shelton. Chris, how's it going?
Doing amazing. Thank you so much for having me on your show.
Great. Yeah, my pleasure. No problem. Chris is the founder of Morning Crane Healing Arts in San Jose, California. And recently you branched off into Burbank, California, going into the LA area, and Lake Tapps, Washington. So 3 locations on the West Coast. And then you're the author of 1 book, hopefully soon to be 2, right? You have Qigong for Self-Refinement, and then you have another one in the works, Ancient Medicine, Modern Miracles. That's right?
Well, the second book actually was supposed to be one big book because it's on common ailments and how to fix it yourself. The second part of the book was supposed to be on back problems. Third part was supposed to be on more difficult conditions like atrial fibrillation, gout, those Meniere's disease. And what I realized was I was going to end up with a textbook, and I want this to be a book for everybody. So we divided it into 3 sections, and the second book that is about 70% done is a DIY home remedies guide to healing your back from the cervical spine all the way down to the lower lumbar.
Whoa, that is very cool. All right, we're gonna have to talk about that today. That's I'm intrigued. That sounds awesome.
Okay.
So Chris, let's get started. What first question I have, very general, very broad. You can go whatever direction you want with it, but what's in your mind, what is one of the most important things that somebody can do just to get started, to get healthy? What do you feel is like the very foundational thing to get started with?
Pay attention to your mental emotional wellness. Unfortunately, in this country, historically, there's been a lack of the ability to focus on being able to help people who suffer from depression and things like anxiety disorders and OCD and PTSD. And so that's the first thing. And that's where the practice of Qigong, or at least the style of Qigong that I teach, comes into play. Because besides from sleeping, getting enough sleep, hydrating, exercising, we see it a lot of times in clinic where a person is a personal trainer, they're healthy, at least on the outside, they're eating well, they're exercising, but then they're still dying of chronic artery disease. It does not make any sense. So this is where the mental emotional state shows up and starts to manifest as inflammation and disease.
And that's what I find so fascinating about Qigong. I took a few of your classes, and then I also took several months with, I'm pretty sure you know Dr. Seth, right?
Yes.
Took classes with him while he was in San Jose. And I find it absolutely fascinating how you just go in and how present you become when you have the breathing down, and the motions are very simple, but they really sort of create that rhythm to draw you internal. I absolutely love it. And I've been thinking a lot about doing things like this again. I really need to start incorporating this back into my life.
Well, you're in luck, because during this whole pandemic craziness, what happened was that all of our classes went online, and we did what was called a Qi challenge. So at first it was free because there's so many people struggling because so many businesses were shut down. And then once things started picking up, we started the Qi Club, and it's every Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday from 8 to 8:30 in the morning. And it breaks down to $2 a class. and you can't beat that. And what's cool is that we have over 200 members so far, and people from around the world. And so you have this collective consciousness of people that are practicing. And as I'm teaching, my wife teaches on Mondays and Wednesdays. I teach on Tuesdays and Thursdays. And as I'm teaching, I'm talking about the practice. And besides the mindfulness, what are we doing medicinally inside the body to help to create this homeostasis and balance, to help to reduce inflammation? And also, most importantly, how can we deal with our emotional stress? So yeah, so we have the Chi Club.
That sounds great. I mean, you can't beat $2 a class. Unfortunately, that's right in the middle of my training when I'm training my clients. So I'm going to have to figure out a way. I'll call in sick one day or something.
Well, what's cool is that you have the videos for up to a week. So every Monday, then it resets itself. So
perfect. All right. I'm going to join your Chi Club.
Beautiful.
Perfect. That's awesome. Yeah. You know, one thing that I really enjoyed about your class is how you do describe what is happening internally, like you just did. You know, homeostasis. And because I know that Qigong in our Western world can get kind of, I think for some of us, it can get kind of out there, right? Like, I don't know if I'm doing this right. Am I feeling this properly? How have you kind of bridged the gap between being able to go into sort of that energy space, but also being able to explain it to maybe a Westerner who has more of like that left brain mentality type of thing?
Well, you know, I don't know if you know this, but we have a couple of huge government contracts with Santa Clara County. We just were awarded another big contract with the county hospitals for the first responders. And, you know, I go prior to the pandemic, you know, I go into the mayor's office or social services, the sheriff's department, police, or, you know, Center of Disease Control. And I give these talks. And you know, so if you keep it very foundational and you keep it straight to the point, like, for example, did you know, besides helping with filtration of your blood and secretion of bile, did you know that your liver is affected by anger, resentment, controlling, being too controlling, and old anger? And did you know that when that anger is held on to for a long period of time, it turns inwards and actually turns into depression? So when I give these talks, I can't come from this mystic perspective. Is there an esoteric side to Qigong? Yes, but I believe that there's a time and place for that. You know, we're supposed to live 120 years, and that's dying a graceful death, not suffering to the day that you die. So when I go and I give talks to the mayor's office or to social services, to the road workers, you know, I have to be able to reach them depending on what my audience is. Qigong isn't an ism. It's not a belief structure. It's you know, it's the foundation of acupuncture in Chinese medicine, and it's the foundation of Tai Chi.
What's interesting to me is that you said you're giving some talks at the CDC, and you know, we're hearing the CDC is coming out and is in the news quite frequently now through COVID, and I don't think we're there yet, right? As far as COVID protocols, because all I've heard to do is stay away from people and wear a mask. And there's no talk from the mainstream, at least, about, okay, well, this is a virus just like any other virus. And if you are, you know, cooking on all cylinders and your immune system is solid, then you should be fine most of the time. You know, there's like a 90, I don't want to quote it, 98, 99% survival rate if you get the virus. And my question is always, okay, well, how do I personally wind up on that 99% and not on the 1%? Are there techniques? Are there things I can do? And I know there are, and I'm appreciative that you're talking in these terms about like, okay, well, the liver, you know, this anger turns into depression, turns into this, you know, obviously a collapsed immune system. And
yeah, so and let me correct myself. I give talks that I've given talks at the Center of Disease Prevention. So I just want to correct myself.
Okay.
And so, what's funny though is that when I go to give a talk, I'll say, okay, how many people have meditated before? And maybe 1 or 2 people raise their hands, right? Let alone probably 0 for Qigong. And I say, this is part of the problem. Like the very institution that's supposed to be guiding this is not doing what they need to do in order to support their own health, right? And to be quite honest with you, we're not allowed to say cure, but Chinese herbology, Chinese medicine was based on viruses and bacteria. The diagnostic systems that we have set up in acupuncture is set up mostly to diagnose different viruses and how they're attacking the body. Hunan opened up so quickly because the Chinese government finally sent 200 acupuncturists in, and they started administering certain traditional herbal formula. And guess what? They recovered, and their economy is skyrocketing. And nobody is talking about this. Like, there's even preventative herbal formulas. When COVID was coming out on board for us, and we were getting the shutdown, we ordered mass quantities of certain herbal formulas for the initial onset, the initial symptoms for our patients and our clients. So that way it wouldn't go deep into the body, right? So there is a methodology. So I was talking to Dr. Dow here in Los Angeles at Yosan University, and actually in Santa Monica. And I was asking Dr. Dow, because he was talking about how they're actually curing, well, I don't want to say cure, but quote off the record, curing people with COVID, and even people with hampered immune systems. So I said to him, I said, I know this, but why is it the news media talking about this? And he said, well, unfortunately, our government officials, especially here in California, have certain interest groups. And those certain interest groups are pharmaceutical companies, and they know that majority of the people out there want a vaccine. So instead of, and I have a couple of students, I have some students, for example, that say, well, we want to do the Chinese medicine, but we want a vaccine ASAP. And my philosophy is that you're going to give your health over to the government and not take responsibility and not take accountability. Well, on one hand, they can say, oh, well, I am, because I'm listening to you about these herbs and stuff like that, but I still need to have this vaccine. But the problem is that this is not going to be the last virus. Does everybody remember when AIDS came out? Nobody knew. Nobody, same thing, nobody knew. If I touch somebody, am I going to catch AIDS? Right? The same kind of fear. And what people don't realize is that when they're frozen in fear, this actually creates inflammation in the body. This inflammation further weakens your immune system. And actually fear weakens your kidney network, and your kidneys are the foundation of the overall health and constitution of your body. So if you're frozen in fear, then guess what? You have sabotaged yourself. And it's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's what is being fed to us through social media, what's being fed to us through the media, right? And and the New York Times 3 weeks ago just did an amazing article that 40 to 60% of those positives are inaccurate.
Wow.
They called out California as being number one.
Number one.
And guess who they targeted the most in California? Santa Clara County.
Oh boy. Yeah.
So
as Santa Clara County as having more false positives.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's interesting because I look, I don't trust necessarily the secondary sources of the media interpreting these numbers. I went straight to the Santa Clara County, health department numbers, and the numbers, even if they're overly high, they don't seem very high to me. In 6 months, fewer than 300 people in Santa Clara County have died. This is a county of 2 million people.
Right.
And fewer than 300 people have died. And I don't know how old, how unhealthy those people were, but I mean, what is that, 50 a month? I don't know if we can use that term pandemic. I mean, I'm no expert, but it seems small, right?
Yeah. And, the term asymptomatic, this is why everybody has to cover up and stay indoors. The reality is that our immune systems build, especially if our immune systems, like you were saying, are strong. Let's say we do get it. All right. Now we have that ability to pass that on to our next generation, to have that immunity, to be able to pass it off to our children or our next generation. Right. But if we stay inside and don't allow ourselves to get exposed, nobody wants to die. We don't want to see anybody get sick. So obviously we have to be smart and educated about this. But the reality is that you can't, for myself anyways, you can't isolate everybody, because what happens then is that you don't allow for this thing to work itself through.
Yeah.
And, when I was a kid, my mom used to give me, anytime I got into the dirt, she would give me a bath. And finally the doctor yelled at her and said, Alice, stop giving him a bath. Let him get dirty. This is how he's going to build up his immune system. Right. And so It's an interesting time right now. So really, it's about educating people. Yes, be smart. If you have a weakened immune system, be smart. But there are remedies that you could do in Chinese herbology and acupuncture that can help you not only prevent, but also if you do catch something, help you get rid of it and live the life that you're supposed to live.
Right. And I know back in the day, they used to have measles parties, right? Like if a kid in the neighborhood got measles, all the other kids would come over and they would have this measles party so that everybody, so ideally all the kids get it, right? So their immune system knows what to do, and then they're adults and they've already had measles, basically like a natural vaccination.
Correct. You know, our DNA is really fascinating because it wants to be healthy. You know, it wants to be healthy, and we have to strengthen it. And unfortunately, I think with social media, everybody being stuck on their phones, being stuck on computers, I think is kind of like a social experiment, because no longer are we, because we're really creatures of community, not creatures of isolation, right? And so as this next generation comes up and they're stuck on their phones, they can't communicate, they have difficulty facing challenges or stepping up, right? And then you add a pandemic in there where they further isolate, right? Oh, you can keep me going on this forever. But anyways, it's definitely an interesting time. And Qigong is not the only system, but it's a methodology that if you do the practices every single day, it empowers you to take control over your health.
That's great. Well, that's a good segue. We're going to end the show in a minute, but I'd like to give you a chance to give everybody your website if they want to join your Chi Club, and you know, names of your books and all that stuff, so they can get in touch with you.
Fantastic. Okay, so we got a few of them. So go, if you want to join the Chi Club, it's the Chi Club, and that's spelled QY.com, the Chi Club. And then if you want to become a teacher, we have an online teacher training program. And so it's Qigong teachertraining.com. And then we also have Shelton Qigong, which is for the international audience, that website. And then we have morningcrane.com for the San Francisco Bay Area. And one last thing, if you go to Chris Shelton Qigong, that's spelled QYGONG, every week we release a video on YouTube on some health-related subject. And again, like today's topic, so today's Friday, so today's topic was on trigeminal facial neuralgia, as well as temporal mandibular jaw disorder, so TMJ, the correlation, what is the root cause, and how to fix it yourself.
Well, Chris, thank you so much for joining today and for taking the time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for the opportunity, and you and your family be blessed.
Thanks for listening to the Health in the Real World show. Make sure to like and subscribe and comment down below. Visit mycorebalance.com to learn more.